If you said it, we believe it. If you said it, hey, if you said it, we believe it.
All right, welcome. It's another edition of Faith Up, here to inspire you, move you powerfully forward. Let's get faith up and grow. So today I'm with Elliott Scott, my brother. He is man, I've known him 5 years. Been out here in Georgetown, Texas. 5 years of fellowship and a men's group together has been awesome with him. He spent 29 years with State Farm, and I will say, as a friend, like a good neighbor, Elliott is there. And so, look, he's a proud father, devoted man. Happy to get his story out today. And one thing you do need to know about Elliott, he spices it up, man. He brings some spicy food to the table. So, Elliott, excited to have you on. Share your story, man. Man, let's hear it. Let's let it rip, baby.
Hey, thanks, Quinn, man. I appreciate you inviting me to come. It's interesting. As we were talking earlier, and I think about just some of the other testimonies, of friends that I've heard. But, like a lot of folks, I come from humble beginnings. Grew up in a fairly rough neighborhood in the South, in a small city called Texarkana. Again, like a lot of people I know, raised by a strong single mother with 3 other siblings. Didn't grow up in church. So we'd go to church every once in a while, but it wasn't something we did on a regular basis. So I really didn't know much about religion or churches or anything like that. And it's interesting because when I think about some of the other testimonies that I've heard, I felt like mine wasn't dramatic, and it's almost hard to explain, but the trigger for me in terms of recognizing that there was a God that I needed to get to know. I was actually driving home in a storm one day, and the only way for me to explain it is to say at some point during that drive home, there was this sense or this recognition that I needed to find out more about God. And after that particular day, I went in search of a church, actually joined a church, but the more I learned about it and asked questions about their beliefs and their thoughts, some of the answers didn't really make sense to me. And so that was a bit of a struggle because I felt I had this desire to get to know God, but I felt like I needed to be in a place where they could teach me and things made sense. And I thought, is God really this complicated? Surely he's not like that complicated, right? And probably within a few months, it dawned on me that my circle of friends, for the most part, were all Christians. And I really didn't recognize that until we were in one of them invited us all over one evening, and in their apartment, several of them began to ask me questions. And I realized that, they were trying to sort of get me to see some things about God, but it was a little uncomfortable. And I think that's, I think it's like that for a lot of people. But one of them invited me to church. And so I went home or not went home, but went to visit her family. And we went to church that weekend. And I remember during the altar call, just having this strong sense that that was for me. But then there was this fear about, if I do this, what does that mean? What's that gonna mean? And so I just sat there. Well, another couple in this circle of friends invited me to their church. And wow is probably the best, this is the one word I would use. I was just captivated during his entire message. And when he gave the altar call, we were actually sitting in an overflow room, so we weren't actually sitting in the sanctuary. But I remember looking over to my friends and saying, how do I get to the front? Because I need this. And I didn't run, but it felt like I needed to run because it was like, this is what I had been searching for. And I'll never forget, he prayed over us. It was a fairly large church. So after the prayer, they baptized us. They prayed with us for the infilling of the Holy Spirit. I mean, so it was just, in my mind, a huge day. And I remember the first few weeks after that were so exciting. And I just, not that everything was different, but everything looked different. Everything felt different. I remember some of my friends being confused because I started a little bit of the Christianese. Sometimes you can start talking some of the church talk, and it's really not the best way to talk around friends who don't get that, and you need to be respectful of them. And I didn't know how to turn it off, because I was just, excited about it and excited that I had, you know, it was making sense to me. And yeah, I remember enjoying everything about it, the praise and worship, um, listening to the messages. I don't know that it even took me more than just a few weeks to begin tithing, because I wanted to do everything I could to be connected to this God. And I remember there were some experiences where he spoke to me about some things, and I had never experienced that before. So, like I said, I was like a kid in a candy store. And probably one of the biggest moments shortly after that, about 6 months, roughly 6 months after I got saved, I met my wife of almost 25 years. And everything about meeting her was different than when I had met or dated ladies in the past. I remember not too long after we were dating, she came over to visit, and I think she was wearing some sweats or something. So she didn't have on this fancy black dress or anything like that, but I remember she literally took my breath away, and no other woman had ever taken my breath away. And then I remember there were a couple of times the Holy Spirit spoke to me distinctly about her. And one of those times was about our future. And so I knew she was going to be my wife. And again, none of this had ever happened like this before. So that was probably the grandest experience after my salvation. But definitely, just I remember it being an exciting time, and how the world just looked different, and I felt like I had a real purpose. I think before salvation, my goal, I was probably 24, 23, 24 when I got saved, and my goal was to have fun and someday make a lot of money. And that was, I would say those are my two goals. I enjoyed being in the business world in corporate America, but um, now I felt like I was actually moving towards a real purpose. And it's one thing to walk around feeling like you got a job to do. It's another thing to feel like or know that you were born to do such and such. Those are, you walk differently when you know that. So that's really my story, man. And some wonderful things happened after that. But I'd say that's really my story in terms of just how God got my attention and how I stepped into the becoming a child of Christ.
Man, that's awesome, Elliot. There's some themes I heard in there. It was almost like going from confused or uncertain, about God, then fearful about taking a step. And then at the end, it seemed like it provided a sense of purpose and confidence and strength.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you, because I remember some of that soul searching after I got, felt like I got the dream job. There was still this, I guess you might call it, an area of like you said, uncertainty, where you still don't know exactly what's going on. And I remember wanting to know, what's my purpose? What am I here for? That was kind of one of my questions that kept rolling around in my head, even before I got saved.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wrestle with that, that are they're stuck, but they want to move forward and they're trying to figure that part out. So what would you say to them? Like someone who's fearful about moving towards God, but definitely is needing to find more of their purpose. Like, what would you say to that?
We often use the expression lean in. And I would say, when I think about that desire I had to get to know God, but then as I'm walking towards Him, there's sort of this, at least it seemed like, fear of the unknown.
Mm.
And I would say, lean into that, because what may seem to be fear is more than likely, the enemy trying to get you not to take that step because you need to take that step. But I would liken it to opening a door just full of treasures from a life perspective, not necessarily financial treasures, that's there too, but just from an understanding your world, understanding your family and friends, knowing what to say and how to say it. So many doors, I think, got opened after I did that. And so I think, sometimes there's this uncertainty about opening that door, but man, there was so much that was rich behind it, or once I opened that door.
Wow. And you mentioned too that it was almost like kind of, cloudy or uncertain, but then coming to faith, coming to Christ, things became clearer. Things opened up. What was that experience like?
I think part of it was, when you don't know Christ, you're literally trying to figure out everything on your own. You feel all the weight, all the responsibility, things that show up in front of you, questions, decisions. You're the one figuring them all out. And, when you step into being a child of God, you realize, you know what? I have a role in this, but man, he's going to fight my battles. And so some of those weightier things that I don't know what to do with, I can ask for help. Some of those decisions that are in front of me, I can pray about them and get not just an answer, but the best answer for me. And then things work out when I go in that direction. So in a word, it's help, divine help that you don't have access to that when you don't know Christ.
That's phenomenal. Thanks for sharing your story, Elliott. Sometimes we all wrestle with going from being confused or uncertain to fearful to the unknown, then getting clarity, and then being real excited that things are moving forward. And you have vision, you have purpose, and your purpose is more than like a lot of people wrestle with, just money and performance. And that's really awesome, man. That's a great story. I look forward to you sharing it.
Hey, thanks, Quinn.
Cool. Hey, thanks for being on. Hey, look, it's about faith up, guys. It's about building your faith, encouraging your faith, growing your faith, and it is always growth time, baby.